This is the MTN 530 News.
I'm Casey Conlon. Today marks the longest night of the year, which is always a difficult one for the homeless community. Coming up, we'll tell you why Billings leaders are worried about a growing trend.
Plus, an early Christmas present for one Billings school employee. We'll show you the keys to a surprise she'll never forget. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, our top story tonight, one more case of the Omicron variant is now confirmed here in Montana. This after the state revealed its first 2 cases just yesterday. Today's variant case is out of Missoula County, but it's unclear how the individual contracted it. With the emergence of Omicron, Q2's Alina Howder caught up with a local doctor who's urging caution this holiday week.
It's now official. Montana has confirmed several cases of the Omicron variant in the state. And with a busy holiday week coming up, many people are wondering what to expect and whether or not the COVID vaccine will protect them from this variant.
I'm a knitter, so I knit.
Shannon Larson has lived in Billings for 16 years. She's a mother, a wife, and like many, she's had to make a tough decision. The decision of whether to gather with family for the holidays, as COVID cases begin to soar yet again.
Everybody was traumatized after last year, so I understand how people want to get back to visiting family.
Shannon's family ultimately decided not to gather this Christmas, but she's still worried.
It worries me when people go back to school and like all the college kids that come home and stuff, and yeah, that worries me when the school starts up again.
And according to Dr. Neil Koo, an infectious disease specialist at the Billings Clinic,
this variant is about 400 times more transmittable than the original variant, and about 200 or twice as transmittable as the Delta variant.
She's not wrong. The Omicron variant is now in Montana. 2 cases were confirmed Monday in Gallatin County and a 3rd today in Missoula County.
With this current variant, I think that's what's was really concerning is that how quickly it has spread.
Dr. Koo says that holiday gatherings can be doable with layers of safety.
I think that going through the effort is worthwhile to keep all the family members, all of their family members safe.
Those layers include getting vaccinated, washing your hands, and trying to avoid mingling closely with others who are not in your household. He also recommends that families get tested for COVID before gathering. It may sound extreme, but Dr. Koo says it can prevent others from getting unknowingly infected.
The more that people employ the layers that they include in, then the safer these holiday gatherings can be.
As for Shannon, she thinks it's only a matter of time until Omicron is detected in Billings.
Everybody's traveling, so it might come quicker to us, I think.
And like most of us, she longs for the day when the holidays aren't filled with concerns about COVID.
The variants would stop if we could stop the spread, and that would be nice to get back to normal.
In Billings,
it's frustrating.
Alina Howder, MTN News.
On top of the variant, Montana health officials report nearly 250 new COVID cases today, along with 11 more deaths. Now, Gallatin County with the most new cases at 65, while Yellowstone County saw 39. There are currently 127 patients in state hospitals as Montana's death toll approaches 2,900. Well, this afternoon, President Biden announced a new effort to get at-home COVID tests into people's hands. The president says the plan is to buy 500 million tests, which will be available to Americans online at no cost. Now, that website is expected to be up and running next month. Also, starting next month, the Biden administration will deploy 1,000 military service members to overburdened hospitals across the country. As you go home to your warm living room tonight, consider a growing population in Billings who can't. According to the U.S. government, Montana has an estimated 1,500 people experiencing homelessness every day, and that number is growing. In tonight's Two Americas report, Casey Conlon looks at why today is especially important for those without stable housing.
The winter solstice marks the shortest day of the year, but in the homeless community, it represents the longest night of the year. It's known as the National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, and event organizers in Billings want it to shed light on a growing issue.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome.
Before the ceremony, community reps give out socks, gloves, and hand warmers to anyone who asks.
Got some mittens.
It's a helpful gesture, but plenty of hurdles remain to solve the epidemic.
The need is higher, the desperation is greater, the addiction is more deadly, the domestic violence is increasing. We owe it to this community when we can admit there's a problem and say, something's not right here.
An affordable housing shortage has homelessness on the rise. This July, Billings was ranked as the #1 emerging housing market by the Wall Street Journal. That meant median home prices rose 20% year over year, and that a housing supply used to being stocked for months was frequently emptied within weeks.
The housing side has definitely gotten worse.
Eric Basie is the executive director of CLDI, a group committed to improving the quality of life on Billings' South Side. They've seen firsthand what the nation's COVID crisis has done to the local housing market.
We found a number of properties that traditionally have not been worth as much money that are worth a lot more money in today's market, especially those who are lower income, that their options for what we would consider adequate housing are even more minimal just because the need and the demand is so high on the other side.
Today we honor the memory of those who have died and pay tribute to those without stable housing. Today we highlight the need for this vulnerable segment of our society.
Riverstone CEO John Felton was the final speaker. It was his decision to cancel last year's memorial due to COVID concerns, and he wishes he could take that back.
Canceling this remembrance seems like a mistake to me. The risk of spreading the virus through this event was relatively low. By not gathering for this remembrance, we accepted the risk of forgetting that people die on our streets every year.
Indifference is often the greatest sin. Casey Conlon, MTN News.
Meteorologist Matthew Hidalgo joining us. Okay, 3, 2. Meteorologist Matthew Hidalgo joining us now. We've had some pretty cold days recently, but what does the rest of the holiday week look like?
Well, it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride. We're starting with this warm-up stretch that will be sticking with us through Thursday. Then a cold front is going to swing through, bringing the chance of some snow. Christmas, we will start to see those temperatures drop. The beginning of next week is going to be a cold one with wind chills well below zero. So if you plan on traveling, please be careful. The conditions may be a bit difficult. Now, along with this temperature swing, we are still seeing some gusty winds west of Billings in the Livingston to Big Timber and Nye areas. Gusts anywhere from 50 to 65 miles per hour. Again, please be careful. Travel may be a bit difficult. Full details coming up.
The U.S. Census Bureau says 1 in 5 Americans live in rural areas, and chances are they rely on volunteer firefighters. Well, here in Montana, that number is higher. USDA Economic Research Service numbers show it's about 65%. And the U.S. Fire Administration says nearly 84% of fire departments in Montana are volunteer. Compare that to the national average of about 70%. And here's the thing. The national trend is those departments are getting smaller and smaller. Tonight, Matt Pearl shows us what's causing the falling numbers and what experts say can be done to raise awareness.
It wasn't long ago the U.S. Census Bureau declared America a nation of small towns. But many of those towns have a big problem. They need firefighters.
When you start talking about two Americas, we're sometimes our own worst enemies because we don't tell people that we need volunteers too.
That's Steve Hirsch of the National Volunteer Fire Council. Volunteers are the lifeblood of most small-town fire departments. In cities and towns above 10,000 people, most firefighters get paid. Volunteers are just 24% of the workforce. But in towns with fewer than 10,000 people, where budgets don't have nearly as much space, volunteers make up 91% of all firefighters. In many cases, they're the whole department.
And quite frankly, there's probably very few volunteer fire departments that don't need help. There are some that really struggle. There are a lot of places, especially east of the Mississippi, that rely upon fundraisers to make their departments work and don't get tax support.
The problem in recent years is finding new ones. The number of volunteer firefighters has remained stagnant for decades, while the number of calls to U.S. fire departments has tripled. The other challenge is finding younger volunteers. The percentage of firefighters older than 50 has doubled in the last 30 years. As for those under 30, no matter where you live, they're getting harder to find.
We also have to look at some non-traditional ways of recruiting people. We got to get a little bit better about that. We got to get better about recruiting women and minorities too.
In cities and larger suburbs, all of this might not be obvious. The number of paid firefighters is growing because bigger places are investing. And what it means to be a firefighter is changing. Most calls to fire departments aren't for fires, they're for medical aid. In smaller towns where hospitals are fewer and homes are more spread out, the bedrock idea of a fire department is on less stable ground.
There's not a firehouse out there that wouldn't take a plate of cookies. There's not a fire department out there that wouldn't accept a check to help pay for the needed equipment.
I'm Matt Pearl reporting.
For more than a decade, Hardin Chevrolet has surprised a deserving member of our community by gifting them a car. Well, it's part of the dealership's Hearts for the Holiday campaign. Well, this year's recipient is Janet Smith, a secretary at Billings Christian School. Now, Janet has a long history of giving back to the community, and that history includes fostering 17 children and even adopting 6 of those kids. Q2 Chief Photographer Paul Humphrey was there for today's big surprise. Take a look.
It's an opportunity for us to give back to someone in need of some transportation. This is our, believe it or not, it's our 13th year of presenting a vehicle giveaway every year, and we just love doing it. Janet this year had over, I think it was over 50 nominations. We knew she was going to be the one this year after about 20 of them came in. So after hearing her story, she's well deserved of it.
My heart is almost hurting. It is about to bust right now. It is so wonderful to be that loved. There's just no words to describe it. I gotta go show my mom.
If you're looking for more positive news, we've got a newscast just for you, highlighting all of the good things happening across Montana. It airs Saturdays and Sundays on our Q2 streaming app, and you can also find those stories anytime on demand at KTVQ.com. Still to come on the MTN News here on Q2, a global record reached this week in the U.S. A look at the rising number of people who are now organ donors right after this.